What is going on, everyone? This is Aric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut, and today we're going to have our second NASCAR video as we look at the 2021 Cup Series Round of 12. We're going to discuss the 12 drivers that made it to the Round of 12, and we're going to look at the 4 drivers that unfortunately did not make the cut. Without further ado, we're going to jump right in. Currently in first place, we have, as pretty much anyone would have guessed, Kyle Larson. Larson's just been dominating this whole season since probably the middle of March. He's constantly been at the front of the racetrack. He's constantly been winning. He has the most wins on the season. It's not even that close right now. He did just win this past weekend in Bristol, so he does have a win in the playoffs right now. His team, his car, everything's just been working in his favor. So he's definitely looking like one of the best drivers. He's looking like the driver to beat right now for the 2021 playoffs. Of course, anything can happen, especially since it all comes down to one race in Phoenix, but he's been looking good. He's been running near the front. He almost was able to get past Denny in Darlington for the first race of the playoffs as well. So, I mean, he's definitely there. He's definitely competing. He definitely wants to win this year. He's been looking good. Like I said, he's probably the front runner. Now, in second place, we have Martin Truex Jr. So, Truex Jr., he's a very strong driver as well. He did win in Richmond, so he also has a playoff win so far this year. He's been competing this whole year. He's been streaky to an extent. He had a good stretch in the middle of the season, but then he has somewhat cooled off since then. He's back on a hot stretch. He was one of the cars to beat in Darlington as well. He was catching up to everybody towards the end of the race, but he did have a speeding penalty that kind of costed him the win, possibly cost him the win. Truex is definitely looking like a guy who's going to compete, going to be in the Final Four. So it's going to be interesting to see how he and his team can handle this. He is a past champion, of course, so he does have that experience. Now, speaking of championships, we have the guy in third place, Denny Hamlin, who does not have a championship. Now, Truex and him are both teammates, of course, with Joe Gibbs Racing. So it's going to be interesting to see if these two guys, continue to work together or not, and if they end up making the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. But Denny finally got his first win of the season in Darlington in the first round of the playoffs. So it's always good for him. He needed that win. He had a tough week. We did discuss that in the past. But Denny, he's been racing pretty well. He was racing pretty well in Richmond. He was racing pretty well in Bristol. But he did have a couple of problems. He had a tire get cut down, I believe it was, in Bristol. So, I mean, Denny definitely wants to win that championship. This year would be his year to do it. But this is probably just a year of Kyle Larson still. Denny, his team, they're all looking strong. The Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas are looking very strong right now. So it's going to be interesting to see which of these drivers ends up winning. But these are definitely my top 3. Now in fourth place, we have the first Ford on the list in Ryan Blaney. Blaney has 3 wins on the year. He, of course, won the last 2 races before the playoffs. Now, in the playoffs, he's been okay. He hasn't been dominant like you'd hope. But part of it's just his car's brake lines failing on him. The Penske Fords do seem to have a problem with the brake lines. Blaney, youngish, talented racer. I'd love to see Ryan Blaney, I'd love to see the Fords not fail him this time around. If you put Blaney in if Blaney can just keep going, he has a good chance to compete. To me, I don't know if he's going to make the Final Four, but Ryan Blaney's a very talented driver. If he can get the rest of Penske to rally behind him, he has a chance because, Logano and Keselowski are both good drivers as well. We'll get to them shortly. But Blaney, very talented driver. He's been consistent in the playoffs. He hasn't been dominant. He hasn't really been a front runner. He was racing well in Bristol early on, but he did kind of give in because he was, really just killing his tires. He was never really able to recover. But Ryan Blaney, he definitely has a chance to make a run this year. In fifth place, we have Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch has rebounded. He had a pair of tough races, or a very tough race, I should say, to open up the playoffs in Darlington. But in both Bristol and Richmond, he has rebounded. Now, he did manage to be the last car on the lead lap in Richmond in what I found to be a somewhat boring race. He was racing pretty aggressively at the end to stay on the lead lap. That probably helped him out, that top 10 finish. He had a top 10 finish in Bristol as well. So he's definitely trending upwards right now. It's going to be interesting because if he has another wreck like he did in Darlington, is he just going to let his emotions get the best of him again? That's my big concern with Kyle Busch. He's a great driver, don't get me wrong, but he does let his emotions get the best of him. He is, of course, teammates with Truex and Hamlin, so Joe Gibbs is definitely in a good position to win a championship. Now, in 6th place, we have Hendrick Motorsports' Chase Elliott, teammates with Kyle Larson. First things first, Chase has been running pretty well. He's been consistently near the front of the pack this whole year. He's been doing pretty much as good as he can. He's, of course, the defending champ. He won last year in Phoenix. So he's a young driver. He's a popular driver. But, my big thing with him is he didn't show any respect to Harvick. He just, Harvick was racing. It's Bristol, you race. Chase acted like a baby, threw a temper tantrum. I know I'm probably going to get some hate for dissing Chase Elliott here, but he threw a temper tantrum. You got to show respect to people like Harvick. Harvick is a legend. You shouldn't be trashing him. He raced you in Bristol. It's not like he intentionally wrecked you in Darlington or something like that. Even Darlington, you get wrecks like that. But, Chase Elliott threw a temper tantrum. That's all I'm going to say. Chase, he's a talented driver. He has the chance to make a run, but the Hendricks cars outside of Larson haven't been performing too well in the playoffs. Speaking of Hendricks, we have 2 more to go. Now, in 7th, we have Alex Bowman. Bowman's been pretty much a non-factor in the playoffs. He's been hanging towards the middle of the pack of the playoff cars, and that's where he currently stands. He hasn't been dominating, but he hasn't been bad. He looks like a guy who's going to be in the 7 to 9, 7 to 10 range by the time the playoffs come to an end. He's good, but is he going to actually make a run? I don't know. He does have a couple of wins on the season, but it's not like he's been cruising. He hasn't had any real dominant wins. He's always just been kind of, passing another car and holding out and getting a Hendricks car to help him out type of thing. Bowman, no disrespect, but I don't know if he's going to... I don't think he has the potential. I don't think he has the ability to win this year. Now, we have William Byron, the last of the Hendrick Motorsports cars, in 8th place. Byron did get lucky. He was actually very close to being eliminated. Had he finished outside the top 5, he would not be in the playoffs right now. He would have been knocked out. He had a pair of tough races in Darlington and Richmond. Specifically, I believe it was Richmond where his brakes just gave and he slammed into the wall. Yeah, that was not a good race for him. So he ended up getting 3rd place in Bristol. That really helped him out. That obviously kept him alive in the playoffs. Byron is a younger, talented driver, but he's been very streaky lately. He's the type of guy who, since he just got 3rd place, he very well might be able to take home a victory. I don't know where it will be, but obviously one victory in the round of 12 gets you into the round of 8. So now in 9th place, we have my favorite driver, Joey Logano. Logano's been doing okay lately. Logano, he's been okay. That's all I can really say. Like, he hasn't been racing to me like a guy who should be making a case for a top 8, top 4. But we'll see what happens. I like what Logano offers. He does bring some aggressiveness. Of course, we do have Talladega coming up on the schedule, so that's going to be a big race for him. Logano always runs well in the super speedways, of course. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can do. He might need to get a win to move on because some of these drivers are very competitive. Now in 10th place, we have Logano's teammate, Brad Keselowski. So all 3 Penske drivers, all 3 Joe Gibbs drivers, and all 3 Hendrick Motorsports, all 3 Penske, all 4 Joe Gibbs, and all 4 Hendrick Motorsports drivers all made it to the round of 12. So those 3 teams are definitely the top. Brad Keselowski, though, he's been doing pretty good. He's, just like Logano and Blaney, he's been having brake problems as well. But he's still a talented driver. Of course, this is his last year in Penske, but they're still treating him like he's, a team member in Penske. They're not going to treat him like he's any different. They're not saying, all right, screw you, we're going to just watch you burn. We're going to support Logano and Blaney. They're treating Keselowski as a guy who they want to hopefully get another championship with. Remember, this team does have 2 championships. One came from Keselowski, one came from Logano. I believe it was 2012 and 2018, respectively. So, Keselowski's a good driver. The real thing is his car going to fail on him? Is his team going to fail on him? We'll have to see what happens. But again, Talladega is a good raceway for him as well. He did win in Talladega earlier this year. So Now, in 11th place, we have the last of the Joe Gibbs guys and Christopher Bell. Bell's just been consistent this year in the playoffs. To me, he's definitely not a top 8 driver, but he's still a good enough driver that you can make a case for him to make the top 8. Still, it's going to be tough. I mean, he did get his one win in a road course, and we are, of course, racing in Charlotte for the last race of this round of 12. So there's definitely potential for him to get a dub. He's more of a short track race dominating type of driver. So I do like what Christopher Bell offers. He's still young. This is his second year racing Cup Series, first year in Joe Gibbs cars. So, I mean, it's going to be very fun to watch Christopher Bell in the future, but I just don't think this is his year. Now, in 12th place, we have Kevin Harvick, who, of course, is the last guy here. He does race for Ford Stewart-Haas Racing, so it's going to be interesting. Harvick, he probably should have won in Bristol, but Chase threw a temper tantrum, so he didn't get to win. He kind of completely screwed over Harvick. And, I mean, I understand because, teammates got to help out teammates, but what Chase did was completely unacceptable. I'm going to stop ranting about Chase, though. Harvick's the only one here that does not have a win yet on the season. So Harvick's still in based on points. And Harvick's just been consistent. So it's going to be fun to watch him. I just loved watching that post-game, post-race discussion interview, if you will, with Chase and Harvick. But Harvick definitely, this might be his last year of actually being super competitive. He is getting on the older side. He is in his 40s. So obviously I'd like to see Harvick continue to race well, but easier said than done given his age. Harvick just above the cut line. Realistically, though, these are just the standings how they currently are. They're very close outside of the top 4. The top 4 are all pretty decent, specifically Larson, who's like 30 points above second place. But, Harvick, very close, easily could jump into 5th place, easily could jump into 2nd place with a win, We'll have to see. Harvick, though, this is probably his last year of real competitive. Now, we do have 4 drivers who got eliminated and did not make the round of 12. The one who came in 13th was Aric Almirola. Now, of course, Almirola did take home the victory in Loudon, New Hampshire, a race which I fortunately got to attend. So I was kind of rooting for him. I didn't want him to be a Penske Ford, but I was rooting for him to make a run. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. He was the first car out. Had Byron dropped 3 spots, because he had the tiebreaker over Almirola, he would have, Almirola would have snuck into the round of 12. But he was racing well. He did have a problem early on in Bristol with his car. They had to fix it. It kind of set him back a little bit, but he did rebound well. Almirola, I'd like to say he has a bright future, but he is in his 30s. So we're going to have to see. Almirola is one of those guys who every race in the beginning of the year, he kept getting unfortunately wrecked. He had all these car problems. So seeing him get a win in person was very nice. I'd love to see Almirola make a run, but it's not going to happen this year. Now, right behind him, we have Tyler Reddick. Reddick was kind of a guy who got in somewhat luckily. He didn't have a good race the last race of the regular season. And then there was a big one, of course, that took out Austin Dillon. Reddick was not involved in that wreck. He got by it, which gave him the playoff spot over his RCR racing partner, teammate, whatever you want to say. And Reddick, he didn't race as well as you'd hope in the playoffs. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't good enough. So he's going to be sent packing, quote unquote. There's still, of course, 7 races to go, I think, at this point. So he's still going to be racing in these races, but he's not competing for anything more than pride at this point. Still, he's a talented driver. He has a decent future. He's always going to be competitive at the road courses, so watch him in Charlotte for the last race. Now, in 15th place, we had Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch, he got very unlucky in Richmond. He blew a tire, came in last place. That essentially set the tone for him. That really screwed him over. He was racing pretty decently in Darlington, I believe it was, and in Richmond. He was obviously last place, but in Bristol, he was okay. He kind of had some problems, I believe, in Bristol too. So it's going to be tough for him to rebound. He's, of course, done with his current team. He's going to be going to 2311 Racing next year. So that's going to be interesting. I don't know how he's going to handle going back to a Toyota. I don't know how he's going to handle having just one teammate and, of course, Bubba Wallace. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that, because Bubba, from all accounts, is not the best teammate. Now, I'm just judging it off of radioactives and hearing, Denny talk about him and watching the races myself as well. But Kurt Busch is the type of guy who doesn't necessarily need a teammate, but he's also a bit of a hothead, so his future is a bit up in the air to me. But still, Kurt Busch, we'll see what happens. Now, in last place, we had Michael McDowell. I mean, is anyone really surprised McDowell didn't move on? McDowell, Front Row Motorsports, I mean, good driver, but it was never going to happen. It was never going to happen with McDowell. He got in because he won the Daytona 500 after essentially pushing Keselowski into Logano. So, realistically, Logano should have won the Daytona. If not him, it was going to be Keselowski, but it is what it is. It's racing. I get that. I'm not ranting about McDowell. McDowell got a bit lucky. He got a bit fortuitous. He was running third place. No one saw that happening. He got the dub. So, he looks like he's going to be staying with Front Row Motorsports next year, which means, unfortunately, Anthony Alfredo will not, because they're going to be dropping from 2 cars to 1 next year. Still, though, I like what McDowell has. He's a good driver. He's been a bit unlucky. He did have a problem in Richmond pretty early on, too, just like Kurt Busch did. It ended his day early. And he just wasn't able to really recover. Like, even if you were watching the race, when they were discussing the playoffs, they would just show the top 15. So they were showing the screens like this, essentially. And they just weren't showing Michael McDowell for the most part, because he was so far eliminated, it wasn't even close. McDowell, though, you can't go wrong. Making the playoffs, good season for him. He won the Daytona 500. He got his name out there. That was his first career win. So, anyway, that was the recap. That's where we're currently standing as well. The next 3 races, of course, we have Las Vegas. Then we have Talladega. Then we have the Charlotte road course. So, I will be watching these races. I'm very excited. Of course, 3 weeks from now, we will be having another video discussing the round of 12. We will not be discussing Almirola, Reddick, Kurt Busch, or Michael McDowell unless one of them gets a win. So I just do want to put that out there. But all said and done, I'm liking these NASCAR videos. I don't know if you guys are. Let me know in the comments if you are. And again, if you're a Chase Elliott fan, I don't hate Chase Elliott, but he should not have been so disrespectful to Kevin Harvick. That's all I'm going to say. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. And just remember, rubbing is racing. Have a good one.